Richard, thank you. To Abbas in Redbridge. Morning, Abbas.
Hi there, good morning. I think Trump is dangerous. And the problem with, callers calling in and sort of discussing statistics and saying, and somehow this is representative and inferring, a whole strain of sort of things about Muslims is quite dangerous because, there was a statistic up north which said, I think something like 83% or 85% of these were Pakistani origin, apparently Muslim, grooming gangs. But there was another statistic which said that grooming rings were 100% white. Now, would it be wise to say that somehow that was representative of all white people? Of course it wouldn't be, would it? But this is the problem, you see. People come up with these statistics, and then the inference that they make is somehow that it's representative of the entire community.
I think you're absolutely right. But let me put this to you, though, because I think there is a bit of nuance that is worth exploring. If given that these statistics seem to show that 80% or 84% of the convictions for the specific offence of grooming, let's see exactly what it says, the specific crime of gang grooming since 2005, 84% of those were Asian. That numbered 222 people. Is it worth, therefore, I would have thought we should try anything with reasonably and without wanting to step beyond the boundaries of the law, of course. But it's worth us trying to find, if there are some common denominators, worth us trying to do something about it. And if there needs to be greater education in, for example, in faith schools, I don't know whether any of these people went to faith schools, then let's do that, because the fewer paedophiles there are in the country, whether they're white, Pakistani origin, Asian, of other origins, or whatever, the better.
Well, actually, Matt, the exact opposite happened. These people were not the Islamic faith in terms of practicing.
Right.
It was found out that, in fact, these people were not mosque goers. They weren't particularly practicing, and had they been practicing, had they been to faith schools, they would certainly not have behaved in that way, because within the Islamic Sharia, if you rape somebody, the penalty for that is actually death. It's not to be locked up for 5 or 6 years. It's the death penalty, because rape is considered to be a very, very serious offence.
Abbas, tell me this before I let you go, because you haven't got as much time as normal, because we've just got so many people piling in. But on this survey of 2016 that Jerry in Vegas brought up, that I think it's roughly, and I've seen it, I've got it in front of me as well, 50%, I think, of British Muslims, according to this one survey, would like homosexuality to be illegal. And this was 2 years ago. How do you, as a British Muslim, respond to that?
The problem with these surveys is they ask a different question, they get a different answer, and they come up with a different inference, a different conclusion. The reality is we don't sugarcoat things. Within the Islamic faith, the physical act between a man and a man, and that physical act between a man and a woman, is forbidden, and it's regarded to be sinful. Now, that does not mean to say that I have the right then to impose my view on anybody else. Neither does it give me the right to treat people differently. I've had businesses where I've employed people who were openly homosexual. I have no problem with that, because it's none of my business, quite frankly. It's between them and God. And so the reality is I can have my view as long as I don't impose my view on anybody else or treat people inadequately.
But it is, yes. But
it doesn't matter.
But that's rather like Tim Farron, who was the leader of the Liberal Democrats, and a spectacularly unsuccessful one at that. He was really wrestling with all of this. Do you remember during the election campaign? Because he was a Christian, but also a Liberal Democrat, and I think he basically, in the end, after he resigned, or as he resigned, he had to accept that he did think that homosexuality was a sin, but as a Liberal Democrat, he didn't think it was for him to impose it on other people. Now, in one way I respect him for that, and in one way I respect a Muslim who might think, a Muslim, because plenty of Muslims don't think that homosexuality should be illegal, but or that it's bad indeed. But I still find it abhorrent, and I'm uncomfortable with the idea that 50% of the 2.8 million British Muslims, I don't know whether all of those 2.8 are British, but a large number of Muslims in this country think that homosexuality should be illegal, because that is a very unpleasant view.
Well, it depends how these statistics were actually carried out, because there was the other statistics in the Sun which said, quite a large percentage of Muslims were sympathetic with ISIS, and then it turned out that they had to make an apology because, in fact, what the question was different. The question was, do you understand why ISIS are doing what they're doing? And Muslims obviously realised that yes, there are some nutters who see what's happening around the world, and they react in that way.
I think this was a reputable survey. I mean, it was attached to Channel 4. So look. I hear what you say, Abbas, and you're quite right. We should have a certain amount of scepticism for statistics, and I thank you for pointing that out. It is concerning to me, and it was concerning when I first read it, and clearly we need to have more education. We need to keep talking about this.
So I'll get straight to it. What these men are doing is not actually rape gangs, no, it is sexual slavery. And we know this because in the Quran, chapter 4, verse 24, it specifically says, "Except those whom your right hand possesses." So it is talking about slaves. Muslim men can have slaves. And Muhammad, the main guy, he had slaves. Virtually all of his followers had slaves. All of the caliphs had slaves. All of the major Islamic leaders for the entire 14 centuries of Islam owned slaves, including sex slaves. And you can even look at Bill Warner's amazing talk on the history of Islam, and he specifies how the caliphs, the leaders, they would request 1,000 white slaves out of Europe, and they would go as far as the English coast. Islam is all about slavery. You are a slave to Allah, and then you can then in turn have your own slaves. That's all it is. It's all about slavery. And so these Muslim men who are raping these children, they are good Muslims. They are doing what Allah commands. Now, in terms of this survey regarding Muslim attitudes to homosexuality, it is absolutely fine. And the reason for that is Channel 4 and The Guardian reported on it. And these two outlets are extremely far left. They're basically communist. So for them to highlight it, it has to be absolutely legit. There can be no issues. It's a cast iron guarantee that this survey is correct. Because they love Muslims, They do not want to be putting something out there that gives a bad image to Muslims if it's not absolutely true. So yes, the survey's fine. Muslims in the UK, they hate homosexuals. That is a fact. Now, amazingly, Matt Stadland's answer to this insanity is more education. Now, what that means in layman's terms is the state, the government, is importing people, Muslims, into this country who don't fit in. And then they are stealing money off of the native population, mainly white men, to educate the Muslim men to stop raping the white men's children. Now, I know that sounds insane, but that is literally what's happening. Can you actually believe it? Mass importation of people who are rapey, rape culture, and then stealing money via taxation off of white men to educate Muslim men to stop raping the white men's children. And no one's doing anything. People, we are accepting this. This is absolutely incredible. But it continues. So, anyway, please let me know what you thought about what this Muslim man had to say. I just don't know whether it is taqiyya or plain stupidity. Like, dislike, subscribe, unsubscribe. Please comment. Ilu Sassoon. Peace out.